stand by me, stand by me.
Good evening and welcome to another in the series of conversations hosted by the Trinity Chapel of the Church of the Holy Trinity. Stand By Me wasn't chosen because it's probably over 50 years old and I expect persons here to be over 50. It is actually one of the songs that are sung by people who are over 50. So we can discuss that after. As I said, welcome to another in the series of conversations. And as you know that this month is Senior Citizens Month, and this is our contribution to that effort. I will now invite Deanne Hodigan to offer the opening prayer.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Almighty God, Father of all mercies, we humbly give you thanks and praise for your goodness and loving kindness to us. Help us to go from strength to strength as you shape us into your likeness. We ask your blessings on each of us gathered here this evening. Defeat the power of darkness in our lives and help us to conquer every obstacle that stands in our way. Guide our thoughts and our words in this discussion tonight. And let your presence be with us now and always, that we may seek to know your will, and knowing it, may gladly perform it to the honor and glory of your name. These things we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Diane. So tonight we are discussing who says that I'm in need of care, a family response. And I've been able to put together a panel with some help to go through this topic. And I have invited Deanne Sobers to moderate this because it's my intention here, as we did last month, to have someone who I think could handle the topic and can put it together, who will be able to do it in a better light than I can. So before I introduce Deanne and then have her take over the proceedings, there's just some housekeeping matters. This time I'll ask all persons to mute your audio. At question time, you can raise your hand or place the question in the chat. And obviously, when you're called upon to speak, you can unmute. At times, the media covers this series. And what you say or should have said at times appears sometime tomorrow or during the week. So I'm just asking persons to be conscious in terms of their presentations and what they will say. Now, to our moderator. Deanne said she sent me her bio and I can either use the short one or the long one, but I will use the medium one. I'll just say that Deanne is a friend of Holy Trinity and Conversations. She's been a resource person even when she's not part of the program. She's a social worker and grief counselor, and she's been trained in the area of She's a social worker and grief counselor, and she's been trained in the area of. She's a social worker and grief counselor, and she's been trained in the area of. She's a social worker and grief counselor. I'm getting feedback and repeat. I'm not sure what is happening there. I'm getting. Feedback and repeat. I'm not sure what is happening there. I'm getting. Okay. I will continue. Feedback and repeat. I'm not sure what is happening there. Okay. I'm sorry, Jason. Is this something I'm doing or? Okay, I'll continue. Deanne, she obtained a BA degree in sociology, and she has a graduate diploma in community politics and law from Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec. And her emphasis in the community politics and law was organizing the community organizers, which seek to eliminate duplication in social services, yet ensuring that the clients receive the assistance they need. Ms. Sobers is the president of the Barbados Association of Palliative Care, a member of the International Association of Hospice and Palliative Care, a member of the Worldwide Hospice Palliative Care Alliance, and a member of the Barbados Association for Cancer Advocacy. She was the assistant director of the National Assistance Board from December 1987 to September 2010. And in 2011 was one of the founding directors of the Barbados Association of Palliative Care. She was awarded the Barbados Service Star on the 30th of November 2016 when Barbados celebrated its 50th anniversary. Ms. Sobers believes that it's a human right for everyone to receive quality care, palliation, and that is as humanly possible, no one should die alone. Therefore, her goal is that of her collective and her colleagues will be to continue to provide the pertinent education to everyone on the island and abroad. And my interest in this and having her is that the time she would have spent as the assistant director of the National Assistance Board, as part of their mandate in terms of looking after and being responsible for the activities of the elderly in Barbados. Welcome, Ms. Sobers, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Let me thank Mike for that warm welcome. And the members of Holy Trinity, I believe that I know quite a few members of the church, including Betty Anderson. I have not seen her on the site as yet, but we are going to start this evening. Not much long talk. I want to welcome all those who are on, especially the senior citizens. We want to hope that you will have a lovely month. We invite you to participate in all of the events that will be taking place. So let me introduce our lovely panel this evening. We're going to have a good talk. This is a field that I really enjoy. The topic is right up my street in terms of who say that I'm in need of care, because every day I deal with someone who says, I don't need that. I don't need that. That's all they say to us. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Kevin Kelman. He's a medical practitioner and a family medicine specialist who has worked in the polyclinic system in Barbados for the past 12 years. And I believe that we're going to have a private conversation after this meeting tonight. He earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in chemistry with honors from Florida International University, Miami in 2001. He graduated from the University of the West Indies with a Bachelor of Medicine, a Bachelor of Surgery degree in 2008, and upon successful completion of his internship at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, entered the polyclinic system in 2010. He was appointed and contracted at the David Thompson Health and Social Services Complex in St. John as a clinical medical officer in 2016. Welcome to the community, Dr. Kelman. I can only imagine what your days are like. In 2021, he graduated from the University of the West Indies with a diploma in family medicine and now functions as a senior physician at the said clinic in St. John. In addition to being a physician, he's a certified national and international judge in bodybuilding, body fitness, and has varied, including weight training, singing. I believe we will hear him singing tonight, politics, and being an advocate of men's issues. He's also a member of the Abundant Life Assembly and functions in the choir and steward ministries. Let me introduce everyone so that the program will flow. And then we have Miss Sharon Sargent, a psychiatrist and a general trained nurse with 25 years experience. Her nursing career started with the elderly, and though she is employed at the psychiatric hospital, she's still involved with nursing care and supports the elderly population in Barbados. Thank you very much, Mr. Sargent. She is presently a nursing officer at the psychiatric hospital. Mrs. Sonia Kadavan. Sonia is a registered counseling psychologist and a certified life coach. Her counseling proficiency spans across mental health, crisis support, psychosocial, and psychoeducation intervention, among other facets. And earlier areas of her professional experiences are connected to social services, NGOs, and pro bono initiatives. Very good. Intertwining her life's purposes, she invokes time to serve church ministries, providing counseling support services, and contributing to the personal and spiritual development of others. God bless you, love. Sonia considers herself to be a thoughtful psychologist who's avid about improving the lives of those who she encounters. As a coach, her passion is to educate and empower others to be intentional in making fundamental changes that would lead them to discover precepts, potential, and genuine purpose. On a personal side, she practices holistic wellness and strongly believes self-care is vital to maximizing one's mental health. I totally agree, and well-being. She values family time, social connections, nutrition, and exercise. Reckons that gaining knowledge and understanding of diverse phenomena and being solution-oriented, including making a contribution to society, that's a central point to living intentionally. Perfect. Then we have Ms. Miela Robinson, an attorney at law and part-time lecturer at the Faculty of Law. He was admitted to the bar in 2010. He has a great interest in young people, education, and literacy, and presenting the convener, and is presently the convener of the Barbados Bar Association Cost and Human Rights Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a panel that is so knowledgeable that we are going to stay here all night on this site and discuss this topic. So the first presenter will be Dr. Kevin Kelman. Dr. Kelman, welcome to our room, and we are looking forward to hearing all from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sobers, and a very good night to you, to Mr. Brown, for providing me with this opportunity, and to the illustrious panel that we have tonight, as well as all of those who have joined us on this call. It's a very good opportunity to have to discuss what is a pertinent and a very important topic dealing with elder care, especially when it relates to Barbados. So the question is, who says that I am in need of care? Now, I hope that throughout the course of the night, we will not only address this question, but we will also look at the fact that every elderly person does need some degree of care. And even if you live independently, that is still a recognized form of care. So the question really should be, what type of care do I need? Now, to put this whole topic in perspective, I would like to share some figures with you, because we need to understand where we are at globally, as well as where we're at nationally in regards to aging. Now, worldwide, we have a phenomenon which is called population aging. And I don't think that this is foreign to any of us. We're aware that globally, that people are living longer. And this is partly due to advancements in medicine, advancements in health. People are living longer lives, more productive lives, have longer life expectancy. We also do not have the number of community-acquired diseases that would have happened 50, 60 years ago that would have caused an increase in mortality rates. So when you couple all of that together, you can see why people are living longer. However, coupled with that, we also have a reduction in fertility rates, and we have a reduction in the youth population. Now, when you combine the two of these together, you can see that the net outcome will be that you will have a population that is aging and trending upwards. Now, this is very crucial for us to understand, and I would like to just share a few figures with you. It's estimated, and these figures are taken by the World Health Organization website. It's estimated that in the year 2030, approximately 1 in 6 persons will be aged 60 and older. And this will account for about 1.4 billion people worldwide. Currently in 2020, the last time that they did these figures, it was 1 billion persons. By the year 2050, it's estimated that the number of persons 60 years and older would actually double to 2.1 billion persons, okay? If we look closer to home in Barbados, and this is taken as a statistic, it's estimated that in 2021, that approximately 49,450 persons living in Barbados are age 65 and older. This accounts for about 17.2% of our population. Now, this is an increase from, let's say, 1972, when we had only 8.8% of persons within that age group at that time. So you can see that there's a substantial increase over the past 50 years of persons who have reached those senior years of age 65 and older. And this population is expected to increase by 1.39% per year. So by 2025, we're actually looking at a figure of 21.4% of persons will be age 65 years and older. That is slightly above 1/5 of our population. Now, you can see why in recent times we had this discussion on NIS and pension plans and so on and so forth, because we're having a substantial increase in the age population occurring in Barbados. And with that, you also will have an increase in the demand for care. Recognize that in the elderly population, you have a wide segment of a variety of different medical conditions. Those will include things like Alzheimer's disease, hypertension, diabetes, osteoarthritis, heart disease, strokes, cancers, osteoporosis, and the like. So when you're having an increase in the number of persons in the senior age, concomitantly, you're also having an increase in the number of medical conditions that these persons are experiencing as well, which not only will place a demand on the health system, but also would place a demand on the family unit. And this is where our discussion now becomes very critical, because you will find that persons of that age, and I am sure that we have quite a number of seniors on the call tonight, as well as persons in my generation who are actually facing the decisions, those critical decisions. What am I going to do with my elderly mom or my elderly dad? What type of care am I looking at? And these are pivotal issues that we need to talk about. Now, obviously, throughout the course of the night, we will get into more in-depth discussion about how you can determine that. But to give you just a little sneak peek into what we can discuss, you have to look at whether the person is able to function independently, or if the person is dependent on some degree of care, whether it's by a spouse, another relative, a child, a caregiver, whatever. You also have to look at the family dynamics. Does this person have family support? That's also very critical as well. You have to look at the type of medical conditions that this person is dealing with, okay? Some of these medical conditions can lead to mobility issues, and that will also guide your decision-making process as well. You have to look at finances. What can I afford? can I afford to put my relative or my elder in a private nursing home, or would I be looking at in-home care, which may be cheaper if you're providing the care, but if you're also looking at an agency or you're looking at outside help, caregiver help, that may become more expensive? Or would it be more financially viable to look at a governmental run nursing home or institution? So these are the different factors that I would like us to delve into as the night goes on. And my final thought on this is that all of us at some point in time will have to face this decision. And my advice is, going forward, approach these decisions when it comes to whether it's you yourself or whether it's you as a family member or a spouse that is making these decisions on behalf of the elder in your family. Approach these decisions with a very strategic way of looking at it, and not from an emotive or emotional standpoint. And there's a reason for that, because ultimately you're looking at what is best for the elder in your family. And sometimes people use emotion to guide their decision, which ultimately may cause them to make a decision that is not truly in the best interest of the elder. And we can explore why that is an issue as the night goes on. So I will end here, but just suffice to say, I am extremely honored and extremely pleased to be part of this call tonight. And I look forward to a very robust and interesting discussion as the night goes on. So thank you very much, Ms. Sobers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samuel. I want to remind our audience that we're looking at the medical, it's a holistic discussion tonight: social, psychological, medical, financial, and spiritual. So we're going to turn over now to Ms. Sargent. As I said before, she's a psychiatric nurse and a general nurse, and we're going to look forward to her discussion with us. Mrs. Sargent, Ms. Sargent, I'm sorry.
Yes, please. Good evening to you, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of your discussion. I first would like to follow on what Dr. Kelman was speaking about, and looking back at the topic, who said that I am in need of care? And that is something that we have to think about when we are thinking about getting care for our loved ones, because that's the question that most of them would ask us. Because for most elderly persons who need care, the struggle we usually have is to get them to accept the fact that they do need care, one, and two, to get them out of their homes, because these persons would be living in these houses for a long time. Some of them have never traveled, some of them have never been away from home. And our elderly population in Barbados, a lot of them have never even slept away from home, either, other than if they have been hospitalized. So that's usually very difficult for them to have this conversation. And that's a question they would probably ask: who says that I am in need of care? When we recognize that our loved ones need care, that's usually a very difficult decision for us to make. Sometimes we find that it is difficult because all family members don't agree on the decision to have that person, taken out of their home and placed somewhere else. Another thing we have to pay close attention to is the finance of the person. If it's, enough finance that can cover that person being in a private home, or if we have to look at the government run homes. And we know from history how people feel about government run homes, not only in Barbados, but worldwide, because people think that if you're not paying for something, you may not be getting the best of it. So looking at these, these very serious topics that relate to moving this person away from the home are something that we usually have to focus on even before we start the discussion of if there's really a need for care. What I like to encourage people to look at is if the relative really needs to be taken away from the home. I know it can be difficult taking care of our relatives, especially if they're, not mobile and so on. If we also have our own family that can prove to be really difficult to, back and forth if you're not living in the same household, to, make the trips, 2-3 times a day to really take care of these persons. But I like to encourage persons to try and to really look at all the alternatives, try the different alternatives before they make the final decision of to really move these persons away from home. I like to always encourage persons to look for the signs early, because sometimes when we do have to make this tough decision, when we do have to have this conversation, at times I find it's a little late, because a lot of things have been done to the persons within the home on their own. So looking at the different things that can really affect these persons, and memory loss. Memory loss is really something that we have to think about, especially with these older persons, because when they start to lose their memory, we realize that they're in more danger, because they might be leaving the stove on, they might be leaving the doors unlocked, they might be leaving, money and so on around. And that's hence where people would kind of take advantage of them. So the memory loss is really something that I like to encourage family members to pay great attention to. At the psychiatric hospital, we have, good percentage of our clients who are within that elderly age group, who were, more or less moved away from home, suffering from things like dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on. And I find that at times it's difficult for family members when they're not able to manage these their loved ones, and hence they may bring them to the hospital. When they bring them, it's an admission. We will hope that this admission is not a long admission, but at times people get comfortable. They recognize that, the home is quieter, they don't have the responsibility, hence they stay there for a prolonged period. Sometimes, they die there, which not necessarily that they had to be there admitted for that prolonged period. And that's something that is very challenging for us at the hospital. Simple things, that can be managed at home. They were hospitalized, so that you can get those things organized, you can get them managed, you can get them on medication and ensure that the medication is working well for them. And then when they're ready for discharge, family members find it, difficult to come back and get these persons once they're discharged from the hospital. So this is another conversation that we need to also look at tonight as we, as panelists discuss how we're going to take care of our elderly and how we're going to make, have this conversation in relation to if they should or should not stay within the home. With our elderly, I usually say to persons, the loved ones, look for the little clues. You're accustomed to your parents having the home clean, having everything in place. We know as they get older, sometimes they get forgetful, sometimes they're not, able enough to do these things. But at times we see great decline in what they were doing before. And that's something that we really have to pay attention to. If we, we have a dad who's accustomed having his face shaved and, looking clean and tidy, and we start to recognize that when we visit, he's not shaved, his hair is not combed, his clothes, not clean, may have an odor. And we just say, well, he's being lazy, because sometimes we put it down to they're being lazy, but sometimes it might be the time that we need to pay more attention to recognize that they do need some assistance before we start to really look at removing them from their home. Another thing we have to pay attention to would be weight loss. And with this weight loss, you recognize that they may not be eating enough. It could be for varying reasons. It could be because of financial situations. They may not be able to purchase enough food. They might not be able to get out to get this food, or they might not be able to cook. So that's another thing that we have to look at, because the weight loss is not necessarily because they're getting older, but it may be because of other, varying factors. Another factor would be in aging would be vision. Sometimes you recognize that their vision are not as good as it was before, but we don't pay attention because we just put down everything to, old age and things may be failing. Yes, that's true. But we too, as the persons taking care of the elderly, we have to pay great attention to things like the loss of vision, or the vision being diminished, because once this starts to happen, we recognize that things are, sometimes not done as well as they were done previous years. We will also may find that they may be taking the medication, not, quite correct. They may be taking a higher dosage than they're supposed to take, or they may be taking less. So that's another thing that we have to pay attention to. the difficulty in cooking because they're not seeing well enough, and they may have diabetes, and you might find they might be getting little cuts and scrapes and so on. But because of the diminished vision, they're not able to pay attention to it. So that's hence where we have now to start to pay attention to all those things. The social economic issues, we find that as persons get older, they go out less, and sometimes we visit less. We tend to think that they're okay, but really they're not okay because some of them are very lonely. I think one of the biggest problems that our elderly have, is really being lonely, being at home alone. And sometimes we just make a call to them, a quick call, not a long conversation. And we believe that once they say they're okay, that they are okay. But most of the times they're really very lonely. So there are lots of things that we can put into place before we start to have that conversation, so that when we do have that conversation, we are sure that at that point of, the lives of our loved ones, that they really are in need of care. And, it's necessary for we to really have that conversation to let them know that they do need help. So those are some of the things that, we try to focus on. And as the night go on, I would hope to, be involved in more discussion so we can look at ways that we are able to help the elderly within Barbados. Thank you.
And now I want you to remember what we've heard before. We've heard of the statistics. We've heard of the demand, the pending issues. We've heard about the mental aspect in terms of I'm getting old. So, I can't remember if I had breakfast this morning. So I want you to remember those things as we continue our discussion. And now we are going to listen to hear Mrs. Sonia Cadevan, a psychologist. And a psychologist, we are not going out of our minds on site tonight that we need a psychiatrist. We are listening to a psychologist. So Sonia, welcome. Looking forward to hearing from you. Sonia.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Sobers. And thank you. Good evening to everyone. Thank you to the Holy Trinity for this opportunity to be part of the discussion. I will reiterate the question and say, it says, who says I'm in need of care? And when I think of care, we have to think about the sequence first. I'd like to debrief a little bit on that, the sequence of human lifespan. We know that we come into this world by birth. The mother is the primary caregiver. We move on to become the age in childhood, followed by adolescence, followed by adulthood. The lifespan of adulthood is the longest lifespan. But if we really look at it, through every growth period, we all are in need of some form of care, or else we all wouldn't have been here today. I like to say the Bible put it this way: to everything there is a season, a time in every matter, a purpose under heaven, a time to born and a time to die. So we will go through a lifespan in life before we leave this world. When we think about care, we have to ask ourselves the question of what really is care? And so I would like to really make a definition on the whole topic of care. Care is the provision of what is necessary for the health and welfare, maintenance, and protection of someone or something. So with all I've heard so far, where persons may be questioning whether or not they are in need of care, it simply says that if they're saying there are no need of care, then they're self-sufficient, meaning that they are able to help themselves to satisfy their basic needs, having met food, clothing, shelter, and being in a place of sound mind. And to say that as well, we will have to say that person is in some form of good health. And what constitutes good health? Health is when an individual is in a state of complete physical, mental, and social wellness, but not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, but that they are able to function and do everything on their own. And that is a definition also from the World Health Organization. So when we think of the whole thing about care, and we are talking specifically about seniors, the year that senior years are normally known to us in the field of psychology as the years of ego, integrity versus despair. It's a period of life where the elderly will either want to be in a position where they reflect on their life and they're feeling satisfied that they have done well, they have achieved well, and they have gained success. The opposite of that, the despair comes when life satisfaction was not fulfilled. They have many regrets and failures for where they are in life. And so that can be one of the psychological pitfalls when it comes to the elderly. So when we think of the elderly, there are many complexities in terms of what will be the outcome. Do I really need care? How do they feel about being in a place of saying that they're in need of care? And when we are talking about interventions, and many of them were mentioned before, there are many complexities to the whole aspect of care and receiving care, and there are also a lot of barriers comes with it. We have family members who are prepared to deal with the issues that they're seeing before them. Some of them are unprepared. Some of them are not even prepared to talk about care for the elderly. So what then do we do? And when it comes to preparing care, sometimes people in the family, the household, they notice it. Sometimes it might be a problem where they don't want to say anything because of the resistance. There are other times that they don't even notice that the person is failing because their life is so busy. And there are other times that the elderly person don't even want to talk about it. So how do we really address that? Someone has to say something. If it's a case where you, the person, the main relative in the home is having difficulties, then you can ask someone to speak about it. So when we're talking about care and arrangements that I've heard so far in terms of how do we get persons to be in a state of readiness to say, well, there is something wrong with me that I may need further care as I age. Then when that doesn't happen, then we will have to seek external intervention. And I like to say external intervention in the sense that you may have to ask somebody who's connected to the individual to make the first step. But not to go on before my time or to go ahead before my time. I would just like to say that, as mentioned before, when we think about intervention, we have to think about, as was said before, the family dynamics. And I always believe when a parent has a family that is either large or small, not everybody, I gonna upset some people, but not everybody gotta be involved in planning it because everybody have a differences of opinion. And sometimes it is important that you select the primary caregivers, those who are more willing to sit down and have a meaningful, healthy conversation regarding the well-being and the welfare of the individual. And looking at it, the individual who is capable of talking about mental care, medical care, finances, recreational, or whether there is going to be also an involvement of home care, daycare versus institutionalized care. You want to select persons, you're going to have to upset some family members. Not everybody is going to be capable or is going to be strong or in terms of making the decision or have some form of administrative approach. Yes, so selecting people who will be there to make all the guidance necessary decision is very important. I don't want to go ahead, but I think I can pause there and I can allow the next panelist to continue.
Thank you much, Mrs. Kennedy. You've been very informative, and we've all heard about health of holistic care. And I've noticed that you've also added finances, you've added the medical part, the psychological part, and now we're going to the legal part. Like you always hear, I'm not leaving this house. I am not leaving this house. I'm going to take the bucket in this house. You don't have any legal right to move me. So we are going to hear from Ms. Robinson of how we would be able to, if we can, be able to move the elderly. Or I want you to also remember other persons. Once they are at the stage where something medically is happening, can we be responsible, the family members, for that care, and how does that? Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nyla Robinson. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a very interesting discussion so far, and I've really enjoyed it. I am actually going to follow on from what Dr. Cadogan said, because who can make the decision is a major concern. There's nothing in legislation that says you can make a decision for another person in regards to their care. Generally, what you use is something that's practical, but we have not yet put into place the legislation, we have not yet in Barbados put into place the type of legislation that exists in the United States or in England, where a person can designate who would look after them. This is something called usually a living power, a living will, or an extended power of attorney. So I would love to say, well, I trust my sister, I trust my son, I'm going to give them this extended power of attorney. And if anything happens to me that I can no longer make decisions for myself, they would be able, they are empowered to step forward and make those decisions. In the absence of that legislation, the general position is that if somebody is fully competent and able to look after themselves, nobody has a right to remove them necessarily from their home and put them somewhere where they don't want to be. Even, and this is where it gets tricky, sometimes you do actually have a right to refuse medicine, you have a right to refuse treatment, but generally speaking, if the person is in danger, if they're a danger to themselves or to other persons, if they can't take care of themselves safely, require round-the-clock care, these are just some of the considerations. If home health isn't an option, or if they're suffering, if they're at risk of illness, if they're malnourished, those are now where external persons, whether it's the family or the social services, would be able to step in and say, look, we're taking this person and putting them into a facility for the time being. Usually, as I said, though, it's done by family. And so in the absence of legislation, the family will be able to say, we know this is what our relative would want if they were able to make this decision for themselves. And that would be their guiding principle. So that's the essence of my decision. The call for us to put in Barbados to put into place that type of legislation so that persons can designate who their primary caregiver would be, whether it's making financial decisions or this type of personal decisions, because we actually don't have that. But in the absence of that type of legislation, it is for the family to step forward, to follow what Dr. Cadogan said, try to see who's the most capable and competent and willing to make these decisions on behalf of their relative. So I look forward to the rest of the discussion, and I'm here to chip in. Thank you.
Any questions? We will continue. To your questions, I would like to summarize so far so that we will keep our response. Dr. Kelman spoken of by the time 2020, our elderly population would increase. That means that it's going to be impact on the NIS and on the healthcare system. We spoke about in terms of psychological aspect from Sharon. We look at the possibility that persons abandon their elderly within the institution, whether it's a psychiatric hospital or even the Queen Elizabeth Hospital or the elderly heart. I'm getting elderly. But we're talking about the district hospitals. And then certain things that we need to look at in terms of that elderly who's at home, weight loss, vision, not taking the medication. And then we look at the holistic point of view from Sonia in terms of what's happening in your home. Are you having conversations with your family members? That's important. And then we look at the legal in terms of what you can and cannot do, that if that person is of sound mind, they can make the decision as to their care. You have to be very, very careful with that in terms of when we say we want to move. And I think it's an ideal time for us to speak about advanced care planning in terms of not giving away your property, but something you're bringing as to your future care. You're never too old to do that. So let me turn now to our participants in our audience, and we can get the first question. And please, so that we can share with you in this room, and let us hear from you, from all participants. Who will be first? And kindly raise your hands so that we'll be able to call your name or your number as we continue. Who will be the first? Raise your hands so that we can see. And we can go from there. Maybe I can stimulate you a little bit. One of the things that over the years I've run into many persons that says to me, and I quote, "I am not leaving. This is my house. I have all intentions of dying in my house. When I kick the bucket, I will do it in this house." And that person has a lot of medical condition. The house is dilapidated, and there's no way that we can repair that house. The person, and usually an elderly gentleman, and he comes out kicking, whereby we have to move. The Constitution of Barbados says that Barbados is responsible for us. Barbados is responsible, Barbados governance, I'm not saying the government, I say the government is responsible for every one of the citizens. Therefore, if you're harming yourself or you're harming others, we can pick you up. That's in the Constitution. To know the Constitution in terms of your future care on this island. And I'm sure that the attorney will be able to help us. Is that so, Ms. Robinson?
Not quite.
You know, your voice is a bit loud enough.
Sorry, not. I wouldn't say that there is a right enshrined in the Constitution for every Barbadian to receive care, but I would say that that's just one of our traditional expectations of our society, especially as we do have a welfare society and spend our tax dollars, looking after ourselves and each other.
Anyone else wants to add to that? Should and should not do? Yes, Dr. Kelman, your lips are moving. So that means that you want to say something.
I wouldn't approach it from the legal aspect, but if I understand your scenario completely, this would be a case where, medically speaking, the person would be definitely in need of what we would call residential care or even nursing home care, depending on the type of medical conditions that they're dealing with. Obviously, based on your scenario, the person is incapable of taking care of themselves. So that would be necessary. There has to be some degree of independent living or capability of living independently in order for you to be a candidate for either in-house, what we call domiciliary care, which could be provided by either another relative, more than often a spouse or a child, or a caregiver externally, whether you have a nursing assistant, a nurse that comes in, a caregiver from an agency that will come in and provide certain care. Or he's not even a candidate for independent living, retirement living. So obviously you're looking at someone who's dependent, someone who needs assistance with everyday activities or everyday activities of living, showering, bathing, eating, grooming, toileting, those sort of basic activities of daily living that we do naturally. Based on your scenario, this gentleman has a difficulty in doing. So therefore, medically speaking, it will be advised for this person to be in some sort of institutionalized care. Now, based on his medical illnesses as well, will determine whether he will be a candidate for assisted living or residential care, which is more often found in overseas markets like the US, the UK, Canada, those sort of places, or if he is going to be a candidate for nursing care, in which case a nursing home, whether it is public, governmental run, or private, will be more of the ideal choice. Those persons who end up in nursing homes are persons who, one, cannot live independently, and two, who would need 24-hour supervision of some sort. And those nursing homes provide medical or what we would call nursing care. So you have to have nurses on staff who will be able to provide certain nursing services, as well as to oversee the supervision of medications being administered, and to also deal with any medical issues that may arise at a basic level. Obviously, doctors can be reached and communicated in case there is a need for us to get involved, but suffice it to say, from a medical standpoint, he will be in need of some sort of institutionalized care, without a doubt.
One else, and I'll give my next scenario. As you know, I live alone. I'm 80 years old, look good, very good. I'm lonely. I find I'm lonely, and I'm seeking to find someone to reside with me. And so I've invited someone into my home, but I have been asked something in writing in terms of future, that if you decide one morning you wake up and you want to put me out of your house, I wouldn't be stuck with nowhere to go. Now, where does that leave me? I'm lonely. Remember, I'm alone. I'm lonely. I'm alone. I have property. I have all of these things. I do not need to go away from my home for care. I'm telling you that. Where does that leave me? The 80-year-old want somebody to come to live with that person. Anyone want any of our panel want to look at that, or even in our audience, if you have an experience like onto that. Yes, Ms. Robinson, you're right. Stephen.
Hit
There you
face
go,
with
Stephen. Night.
Pardon? Can you hear me?
Yes, and then after we go to Stephen. Yes, Ms. Robinson.
Sorry, thanks. I would say to start by going to visit an attorney to draw up a contract, because I understand the concern of the companion that they don't want to be out on the street. But at the same time, if relations break down, you can't have somebody in your house that you're not getting along with. So there must be some way that you can say, I'm going to only give a week's notice or 2 days notice, so that the companion can prepare themselves and know that, or even the companion may only need to give 2 days notice or a week's notice, or there must be some alternative arrangement, that if things don't work out, this is some sum of money that's going to be held like a security deposit, so that the companion, if they have to leave suddenly, can find alternative accommodation in the short term. So that would be my way of approaching it. You don't want people tied together who are unwilling to be together. But it is not a bad idea once the person feels comfortable. But I would definitely say approach an attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I will add to Ms. Robinson's, anyone else. Stephen, your hand is raised. Would you like to share your beautiful face with us, Stephen?
Yeah, good night. I know a married lady, right? She's about 60 years old. She do not have much family members. She live alone, and she with her house. She was contemplating as she passed who what will become her property. But right now, she said that she don't have no one to leave the property with. What is the best advice you think you should could give that lady?
Let me repeat what I just heard. I was saying that this person lives alone, has no family members, and she wants to give what she has, or she wants someone to reside with her. Is that what I heard?
No,
But
she's staying alone. She don't want to live with her. But she wonder what as she pass, what will become of her property, or who can she live it to?
things that I've noticed, I'm just giving a scenario again. Persons will contact their attorney, as Ms. Robinson said. Persons speak to their church too. The other point is that within their physician, they could discuss the matter with their physician, but that person must be of sound mind before they sign a document. Remember that. So I can be sitting here now having a chat with you, and I look across and say, "Wait, where that cat come from?" And there's no cat in the room. I might have sound mind. There's no cat in the room, but I'm seeing where I'm coming from. So they're more aware, and I'm sure the psychologist on the line this evening will be able to give us some scenarios or opinions about that in terms of what is sound mind, what do we consider sound mind, Mrs. Kadaga?
Hi, yes, Ms. Sobers. Just to follow up basically quickly on what he said. He said the woman lives alone and she doesn't have anyone. And there are many cases like that here in Barbados, even in my neighborhood, and my neighbor was in that similar place. But when you spend time talking to the person and exploring, they actually do have family members, but they actually estranged from each other, or they don't have a good relationship. So the first thing is to do is to encourage that person to connect. I remember when my neighbor began to give me Christmas cakes, and I said, okay, all your siblings are overseas. You said you have one niece here. Can you go and take that cake and give her? And I began to create an intervention where then she began to, taking that cake, begin to start a relationship. Within a few months, down the road, 9 months, she was diagnosed with dementia. She left her car and walked home from the supermarket with the engine running. That niece is in her life today, cooking daily meals for her. If I didn't sit and spend time to get to know, having her to connect with the siblings overseas and one coming in and cleaning up the whole house, intervention begins to happen. Sometimes people are estranged from their family. They had bad relationships. Everyone has pride in making peace and establishing some form of unity. I ain't talking them to first because I talk to them to 10 years or 15 years. You have to be the peacemaker. Somebody has to be the peacemaker. So I remember even calling, I said, I'm going to call the niece, and I talked to the niece and I helped them to build that relationship. So today they have the relationship. So with that individual, there must be somebody alive in the family that can now play a key role in building back the bridges that was broken between the family household. The elderly population is always driven by loneliness because they are always forgotten, or because of the nuclear family is so dynamic and extended family is so dynamic that everybody has so much responsibilities that people, our lives are so busy that they don't normally have time for that individual. And so when anyone comes that seems to spending a lot of time around that individual, they become drawn to them or attached to them. So they then have an attachment issue to the person and they want to have them in their environment all the time. When we talk about finance, I would say to those seniors now who are there now, don't wait until it's too late. It is time that you call, whether it's the pastor, you have a meeting, if you want to have a physical examination for sound mind. You know someone is a sound mind when they can make good decisions for themselves, when they can tell you or express their emotions, their feelings, when they can explain I'm not well, when they can read and write and interpret and understand what is going on with time and seasons. When you find that there's memory loss, agitation, they're not remembering basic things. Well, when they had lunch, and we know that's all Alzheimer's or dementia, when they're not remembering their daily activities during the day, you know something is wrong with them. When you check with them, you would say, did you have a bath today? They can't even say if they had a bath. They're not able to go and shop for themselves. So all of those things, you would know that that person is struggling mentally, or they have some form of cognitive impairment. And that is where then you will say, well, maybe they need to have a medical examination or a psychological examination because they're not in sound mind. And that referral can be made, and that practitioner then can say, well, this person is experiencing this. So when it comes to the legal matter, rushing the individual to have legal documentation, I will always say that the lawyers seek to have some form of report from the physician relating the mental state of the person, if they're capable in making that decision. That is what saved the detriment. Bearing in mind that legal power of attorney can be, if people decide, well, I'm not sure about this person, I can give them a limited time because I can revoke it. So you don't want to make a permanent power of attorney. You can also decide, well, who is going to be the beneficiary or the trustee in case something go wrong. But I would say to the seniors, do not wait while you're still now here. It is important that you begin to create a plan that outlines what is going to be my medical care expenses, what is going to be my social care expenses, what is going to be my supplies, my food, my everything that I need, what I need to save towards pension, life insurance. We don't want to wait until, and I'm talking from the time people hit 40s, they should be planning. Don't wait until you turn 60 or 65. By the time you hit 40, you should already establish some form of life insurance. What is going to happen to me when I'm buried, when it's time for me to go down in the grave? Will my family have money, right? So we don't want to wait until 65. Intervention is early.
Thank you. I want to put the other scenario in terms of I'm a mother of 10 children. 5 of those children reside overseas. And the 5 here says, Mom needs care. Mom is telling the 5 here, I don't need care. But the 5 children overseas is communicating. Now we have the WhatsApp and all of that. And you have a conflict within the family of these 10 children and mom and dad, and maybe a husband or wife within that home. Then I always encourage parents not to, I know they say mothers love their sons and fathers love their daughters, and you have that sort of intertwined within the families. And the point that you made, Ms. Kadek, is that families should come together and have a conversation. I don't know how many of you go to funerals, but sometimes when you hear the eulogies, you will or see the obit in the paper is that one son can be left out, and that will cause a whole devastation within the family. So it's important that families get along. When, as if you're a parent and you're getting old, and I'm going to use that word attentively, the word is there, old. You become a senior. Make sure that your children come together. You will say, my father never gave me nothing, and my mother used to do this, and all of that causes a conflict. Then when you are in need of care, remember that. I believe that I saw Sharon, her mouth was moving and she had a point to make when Ms. Kadek was speaking. Sharon, go ahead. You're muted, Sharon.
Still can't hear you, Ms. Sargent. You're on mute.
Sorry?
Yes.
You're muted again.
There you
Hello?
go. There you
Yes.
go.
Okay. I was basically thinking about what she was speaking about, and I was agreeing that at times family members cause a lot of confusion as it relates to the elderly. And sometimes the elderly, they're between a rock and a hard place, basically, because, you know, they have, you know, 3, 4 children, and they do have a favorite, like some, you know, some parents do have, but that particular person is not really taking care of them. And the one who is taking care, you know, is the one who really and truly has, you know, no access to the finance, no access to the home. And that person really have great challenges. And at times after trying for, you know, a long time, sometimes that person gives up. And the person who, you know, the parent expects to be there aren't really there. And then you will find that this person is alone. There's no one to take care of them. So then, you know, we would say, well, she has 3, 4 children and there's no one to take care of her. She's there alone. But sometimes it's the family dynamics that really cause these issues. So it's important for family members to really get along, to come together, put things aside, because at times, you know, the fuss that we're making about things is not even that important. Sometimes we can't even remember why we're upset with each other. So I think it's really important, you know, as we age and as our parents age, to really put things behind us and really stay together as a family unit.
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes in terms of before we have our wrap up, I believe. I wanted to ask one question of, she is my Dr. Kelman. One of the things that we're seeing now with COVID, the amount of elderly that are in the hospital, one of the things that we're doing in palliative care is trying to bring persons into the community that they can return home. Although the homes may not be adequate, and work within nursing homes and making sure that that person gets quality care at the end of life. That's what we want to provide for not only the elderly, but any person who is ill. We need to remember that. Although it's Senior Citizens Month, we can also look at the communicable persons who are living with non-communicable diseases and are in need of care. One of the things that we never look at the word is denial. I am now 65, up and about, running all around the place. And now I am just sitting here thinking that I am going to be scared, lose my independence, lose everything, lose even writing a check. I've heard that from one elderly lady, said her husband used to write the checks, and now she can no longer write a check. There are a lot of mental issues with the elderly. Not a lot. I'm using that word "lot" for a reason. That it is not only that I need psychological help, I need help understanding that I'm aging and I can no longer do things for myself. That I'm afraid or embarrassed to ask Sonia for help, Sharon for help, Michael for help. The embarrassment of that loss of health is very traumatic as you become older. I want us to remember that. That's where communication comes in, and we heard that from the beginning. We need to communicate with those persons or neighbors or friends in terms of what is happening with you, what is happening with me. Don't be embarrassed to become aged. It's not an embarrassment. It's a joy to become old. And let me add this in here. It's a joy to get married in your old age. If you find a nice companion, I'm not going to tell you how old you should be. But I'm telling you that if you find a nice companion, and both of you get along, get married, and children stay out of your parents' lives when it comes to making such decisions. Don't tell he or she, what are you looking for? Why don't you behave yourself? It's not time for that. That's not the point. Anybody wants to add anything to that? I saw Dr. Adrian Lord on. I don't know if you would like to make a contribution. Dr. Lord, I'm with the panelists. Anything you would like to add?
No, nothing really. I think you are on point. And yeah, I wouldn't really want to add anything further.
Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. Anyone else? Or then
I
we should-
would say, if I may, Ms. Sobers, that what you said is actually very much correct. This is a problem with a lot of our elders nowadays in these times, because to be honest, we have lost a sense of community that used to be years ago. And we're talking about that community involvement, not only with children, but with elderly persons that existed with our parents' generations, with our grandparents' generation. We do not have that now. There was a time when, and you could see this in other countries, where young persons took the initiative to look after their elderly relatives. You will see this in Asian countries. But I find that in the West, especially in these times, we have lost a lot of respect for our elderly. We do not see them as assets. We see them as liabilities. And part of this is because of the breakdown of the family structure. We do not have the nuclear family structure existing anymore. So once before, when you had the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, everybody involved in care, whether it's children or elderly, you're having persons that are branching off in couples and in individual units and not having any connection with the extended family anymore. And when you look at the state of the elderly now, that plays a part in it. And you know, when you talk about family dynamics, that in itself would take a whole Zoom meeting to really thrash out, because there are a lot of different scenarios that play into that. But what you said that was pivotal is the fact that a lot of seniors feel lonely, and they feel lonely because in some cases you have that lack of family involvement, that family connection. The children are off living their own lives. They can't be bothered to be involved with the parents. They're too busy doing what they have to do, whether it's their job, their own families, or whatever. And in some cases, the relationships are so strained that they do not even want to have a connection with their elderly parents, even though they may need help. So this is where we have to really focus a lot on. We need to get the family structure back. We need to get the sense of responsibility of our younger persons within the family structure, looking at their elderly parents, looking at their elderly relatives, and recognizing that these persons are true treasures. These persons are invaluable. These persons have raised you. And this has nothing to do with whether or not you felt that they were the greatest parents or whatever the case is. There is a sense of responsibility that we should have towards our elderly parents. We talk about the Bible, and one of the things that the Bible says is to honor your father and your mother. Okay? It doesn't give conditions as to whether you think that they were the best mother or the best father or whatever. It is because at the end of the day, you don't have to do it, but you should count it as a privilege to do it. And in the absence of that, you should have the community now stepping in. And again, that's a problem. You have neighbors that live next to each other that don't even know each other. So if you have an elderly person that's living alone, that really cannot function independently, that needs help, that's not bathing, that's not eating, that's becoming malnourished and so on. A lot of the cases, the neighbors that live next to you may not even recognize what's going on because you don't have that connection like we did back then. So when we're talking about elderly care, we're talking about a whole holistic approach that needs to be brought into it. And a lot of it has to deal with the relational aspect of things.
Thank you very
So
much.
that's my parting comments on that.
Thank you. So I'm going to give each panelist a minute to summarize what or anything that you want to miss, or we move to Miss, and then we turn over to Mrs. Dion Mears Connell. 1 minute each. We'll give you a chance to wrap up. And I'll start first with with Miss Robinson, and then we come up as we went down, we go up at this point. Robinson.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly revisit the question that was asked before about the lady who wanted to leave her property. One of the things Ms. Cadogan said struck me. That person might have family. So be careful telling them, well, yes, leave your property to the church. Then their family comes and contests the will and says, oh, you know, the pastor influenced them and you have a whole court case on your hands. So I just wanted to say to, I think his name was Trevor, you know, yes, you can help her think about what she wants to do, but you know, also make sure that she has her certificate of competence, that you can show, well, this person that she's leaving it to is a longtime friend or companion or is looking after them and not somebody that has just decided that they should leave their property. There is a lot of fraud.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
But thank you all for having me. I would just repeat my
Quite
call.
welcome. Very well. God, you are fine with us. Evelyn?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with Mr. Kelman and his remarks on the family being relational and connected. And the Bible says it's simple. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied their faith and is worse an unbeliever. And so when we think about this whole issue of family care, what makes family care successful? At times we may have to sit with that same individual, the elderly person, to hear their views, how they feel, let them express or vent their anger or their frustration, and whether they are sound mind or not. Giving them that opportunity to speak for themselves brings much satisfaction, and it makes intervention much easier. It causes intervention to take place much faster. And that person would be more comfortable and satisfying to talk about him. If you know that you're having trouble with that person, invite someone, whether it's the pastor, the doctor, or somebody that they would listen to. And in summation, I would like to say any care plan that integrates the family unity, community to support, the church support, medical support, recreation or psychosocial intervention, financial and legal administration is considered an effective or efficient care intervention plan. Even more so when family demonstrates love, responsibility, commitment, and unity. And to note, we are all mortal and is prone to experience infirmities that comes along with aging, and we all will be in the place, whether young or old, someday, where we will be in that seat and need care. I thank you so much for this opportunity. Happy Senior Month to you all, and blessings unto you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cadogan. Karen?
Yes, good evening to you once more. I just want to remind everyone that the last 2 years would have been really difficult for our seniors because in the advent of COVID, and something that our seniors really look forward to would be going to church. And, you know, there was no church for a long time. Church was one of the last, you know, places that were able to open up again. So things that our LD look forward to would have been going to church and going to funerals. And both of those, you know, were out for our elderly. You know, they were unable to meet their friends, see persons and so on Sundays. And we really had a lot of elderly persons who were very lonely, who got, you know, depressed and had some really hard times. So as things are opening up and, you know, things are looking a little brighter for us as it relates to COVID, I want to, you know, remind all of you that our elderly population is still out there. Remember them, start to visit them again. Remember to keep our masks on and keep sanitizing, but try to, you know, let them know that we still care, because it's long past just giving them a phone call. I think they really need at this time to see our faces again. So that's an encouragement that I want to give to all of us here tonight, including our panel, to remember the elderly out there and remember that they're lonely. So we have to get back out there to them. So thank you very much for inviting me. And it was definitely an eye-opener for me. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then Dr. Kelman.
Yes, good night, everyone, again, and thanks for this opportunity. I really thoroughly enjoy this conversation, and I hope that in very near future, we have similar conversations again. My parting words are this. Elderly persons are persons too. They're human beings, they're persons with emotions, they're persons with feelings, they're persons with needs. They're not to be discarded. They're not to be rejected. They're not to be disrespected. These are the persons that have built our families, built our communities, built our society. These are the persons who have raised us from babies to the point that we're able to be functioning as adults. They are deserving, more than deserving, of our respect. Remember, and this is going based on what my colleague said at the last, we need to get involved with our elderly. We need to show them the love and the care and the affection that they need. We need to look after their needs and count it joy to do that. It is a privilege. There's some of us that don't have our fathers and our mothers around that wish that we did. These are things not to be taken lightly. We can learn from these people. We could gain their experience. We could learn from their experience. We could be mentored. We can get wisdom from them. They are true, invaluable treasures in our lives. And I pray and I hope that we treat them as such. So thanks a lot for this opportunity. And again, have a blessed and wonderful Seniors Month.
Thank you very much. And my parting words are learn to laugh a lot. I think the radio station needs to put on more comedy so that we can laugh and treat our liver, and more classical music in the afternoon. I remember when I was growing up, between 1 and 2 o'clock, we would have a classical hour. They've taken that out now with the and we need to laugh. Good comedy. It keeps you young. Have a good belly laugh. Learn to do that as you become older. Laugh more, cry, laugh for everything that you have. That's your emotions. So, Brother Brown, and let me thank Anna, thanks you all for inviting me. I enjoy the evening with you, and God bless you all.
Before we wrap up, I will ask Dion Connell to give a summary of the evening. Even though we've had summations as we went along, I would not want her not to fill in that part.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me to do the summation for this evening. I think we had a very good discussion, and I'd like to thank all the panelists for the thoughts that they shared over the last hour or so. And I think we can come away from tonight's discussion knowing that all of us are in need of care, not just the elderly, but we all are in need of care. And all of us have to make the decisions about what type of care we need, either for ourselves or for our relatives. And one of the points that I really saw coming through is the need for community, not just family, but for the community to work together in providing that care for our elderly in the society. And I really like to emphasize the point of burying hatchets. Many times a lot of families are destroyed by minor disputes. And those are things that at the end of the day, when the person or persons are gone, then we find ourselves feeling sorry because we weren't able to bury those hatchets and recreate the family unit. Some of the key points that were made during the course of this discussion is that we need basically to come up with a plan and have persons in place who can make the decisions. I remember Dr. Kelman saying very early on that we cannot make decisions that are based on emotions. And from time to time, persons always start to start to say, oh, this is my mom or this is my dad, but we need that person in the family or even somebody external who is able to say, this is what needs to be done, and this is what is going to happen, and this is to the benefit of our mom or dad, our sister, or whoever it is that is in need of that care. I liked Sonia, when she made the point about not waiting until it's too late to make those decisions as well. Oftentimes persons wait until they get much older, and then, like Nala would have referenced, then they're not of the sound mind to make those decisions. And then we go back into that issue of family disputes again over power of attorney and who has the right to make these decisions. So I would advise all of us to put those plans in place from early of what we want or what we need, and speak to our parents and our elderly relatives as to what they would want to happen if they get to the stage where they are unable to care for themselves. And it's always that hard decision for a person to accept that they are indeed in need of care. And like Cheryl would have emphasized, we have to determine what type of care that these persons need. Is it that they need home help? They need to be placed in a public or private institution? Or can somebody in the family provide that care on a day-to-day basis for our elderly? And I know Ms. Robinson emphasized the point that right now we don't have the legislation in place for to have
Advanced care planning.
the extended power of attorney. And I think that is something that we could get on board for, especially from Dr. Kelman's estimation that we are going to have at least about 25% of our population by 2025 who are going to be elderly. So that means more and more persons who are going to be in a position where they need care. And some persons, even though it was spoken about, there are some persons who really don't have any family surrounding them, because like Dr. Campbell would have indicated, we have a low birth rate. So as persons get older, if I'm an only child, there's nobody. As the older I get, there's less and less persons there to take care of me or anybody else or if your family dies around you, then who's there to take care of you? So I think we should really support Ms. Robinson in that push to get that type of legislation in place, to have the legislation where persons can make those decisions for their care as they grow older. So I think that about sums up. Oh, and one final thing, looking at the early signs. I think if we have that strong community and family units, then we should be able to pick up those signs from our church members, our neighbors, and our friends when we see things that are not a part of their normal routine, the lack of deportment, weight loss. It just takes a phone call or just drop it in to say hello, to check on somebody. And I think that's something that we really need to do. I know as a part of our diocesan MAP program, we're looking at building back up the health fields in our churches. And I think that's something that we could focus on, calling our elderly, talking to them, and seeing how we can assist them in caring for themselves. So once again, I want to thank all the members of the panel for making a contribution here tonight. And I hope that we all have taken away something that would help us in caring for our elderly and even for ourselves as we plan, as we get older as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. As Dion, I'll follow on from what she said. She would have thanked the panel. I would like to thank those who would have asked questions. And for those who are here tonight, but there are persons who you would not see, but we have a team in the background, our technical team, Jason and Shannon, and also I want to thank those persons I would reached out to bounce this topic off of, and they readily supported my thought. And that is got George Griffith, Fabian Sargent, and Dr. Diane Ford. And I would also like to thank Diane Holligan, who would have done the opening prayer, and in advance, Jennifer Gooding, who will be bringing the closing prayer. And again, thank all of you for once again supporting us in our conversation series. Thank you. Jennifer?
Let us pray. O God, our Father, as we come to the end of tonight's program, we thank you for all those who have taken part in the discussions. We give you thanks for our panelists tonight, and we thank you for those who have given us guidance, good counsel, and good examples. We also give you thanks for elderly, whom we especially bring before you tonight. And may we ever be mindful of and be sensitive to their needs. Lord, you know the needs of each one of us, and you know the secrets of our hearts. Help us tonight to cast all our burdens on you, certain that you care for us, and sure that you will help. These things we ask for your love's sake. Amen.
Amen. Good night, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Stand by me.
Stand by me.
Yeah, this song, yeah, this thing.